What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Ben Ballion, back with another episode of the Sports Pod. And today I'm joined by a very special guest. He's been a Giants beat reporter for a long time for a variety of sources. He does Giant preseason games on the radio, and he broadcasts NEC football and basketball on TV. Very excited to have Paul Dottino on the show today. How's it going, Mr. Dottino?
Hey, good to see you this morning.
Good to see you too.
That ball is out of here! Out of here!
All right, so last year the Giants had pretty high expectations going into the season. They had just won a playoff game, and Daniel Jones showed a lot of promise after a pretty disappointing start to his career. I mean, he was a 6th overall pick, and the wheels just kind of fell off the bus early. The offensive line was not good at all, and they dealt with a bunch of injuries. However, the lone bright spot, or one of the lone bright spots of the season, was the defense. They showed a lot of promise, a pretty young core. The defense will change this year with Shane Bowen taking over as defensive coordinator, with Wink Martindale on the leaving. Giants in the draft drafted Malik Neighbors 6th overall. He was their main pick. They also drafted a safety in Tyler Nubin. And some of the outgoing players this offseason, two very impactful ones at that. Saquon Barkley, who most people know left for the Eagles, and Xavier McKinney, who went to the Packers. All right, starting with an overall view of the team, what's one big positive and one glaring negative about this current rendition of the Giants?
Well, the big positive is that it's a group of young veterans mixed in with obviously young and experienced guys from the rookie class of this year. And even last year's rookie class, some of those guys got some snaps, but you can't exactly call them, grizzled warriors. They only been around going into their second year. It's a young, talented roster, but at the same time, that's kind of the negative, because there are a lot of young guys who are going to be forced, if the Giants are going to do well this season, into stepping up and producing at a high level. I mean, it's really a double-edged sword. This is one of the youngest teams in the National Football League. And, there's a downside to that, because do you think for sure that they're going to be okay in the secondary? It's a really unproven secondary. I mean, even Deonte Banks, their first-round draft choice from last year, is only in his second season. Now, I think everybody believes he's really good, but he's still only a second-year player. On the other side, Cordell Flott has not had a ton of experience playing outside corner, and at the beginning of the season, it looks like that's going to be his job. We think he's really talented. We think he's really good, but we can't be 100% sure. And you mentioned McKinney left to go to Green Bay as a free agent. Well, who's going to be the other safety next to Jason Pinnock? Is it going to be Dane Belton, who has been here for a few years and has shown some really good flashes? Or is it going to be Tyler Nubin, the rookie taken in the second round out of Minnesota? Very highly thought of, but he's unproven at the NFL level. So I don't think I can give you a better example of, the positive, in that there are a lot of young, talented players here with a lot of upside and room to grow. But that flip side negative is that you just can't be 100% sure if they're going to be as good as you think they are.
Absolutely. I think the defense should be solid. It's still very young. I mean, this defensive line seems like it's going to be incredible with Brian Burns, Spider-Man, Dexter Lawrence, and Kayvon Thibodeau getting after quarterbacks. I'm very interested to see how new defensive coordinator Shane Bowen attacks and schemes with that defense. So that'd be the positive for me. And then the negative, probably that backfield. Like Daniel Jones, what has he done outside of that 1 year? He's going into his 7th, 8th season. He's won a one playoff game. Yeah, but even in that season, he wasn't very impressive. And then the guy right next to him, Devin Singletary, I think he's going to be a solid piece, but he's not by any means a Saquon Barkley. And the Giants depended very heavily on the run game with Saquon and with Daniel Jones. So it's going to be if Daniel Jones can stay on the field and how much of Saquon's production can Devin Motor Singletary fill. Staying on the topic of Daniel Jones, he's going to be returning from his torn ACL. And if he underperforms again, could we see Brian Dable make the switch and start Drew Lock at any point in this season?
Well, if either Jones gets hurt and or he performs very badly, yes. That's why Drew Lock is here. He was signed as an insurance policy. I believe he's only 27 years old, but you could double check me on that. You know, he's only been a starter for kind of one season since he came into the league as a second-round draft choice, who was always highly thought of when he came out of school. He's got a terrific arm, throws a really nice ball, has shown me during the spring training camp and the practice drills, he has a lot more mobility than I thought he had when he came out of school. So, yeah, I mean, could you see Drew Lock this season? You could. I don't think you will. I think Daniel Jones is going to have a very good season, and I think all of his critics are going to have to eat crow.
I think Jones is going to be good this year. He finally has the potential to have a real number one wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. The offensive line is good enough, I think, with them bringing in John Runyon and Illuminan. And Devin Singletary is nothing to scoff at. I know I mentioned that he wasn't a Saquon level, but he's still a pretty good running back. But if you had to put a percentage on if we're going to see Drew Lock, injuries aside, just based on talent, what would it be?
Very, very low. I wouldn't put a number on it, but it would be very low. Aside from injury, I believe very strongly in Daniel Jones. I think that you're right. They've given him the best weaponry in terms of the passing game that he's had since he's been a Giant. I think that's incredibly significant. I think the durability of Devin Singletary is one of his best assets because he's incredibly reliable and he's consistent as well. So he's not spectacular. He's not an all-pro by no stretch of the imagination. He is nowhere near the all-around superstar talent that Saquon Barkley is. But he is very workmanlike, methodical, and again, the kind of guy you can count on. And he will do the necessary things to help your ball club win. Look, everywhere he's been, Buffalo and Houston, during the early stages of his NFL career, he has been the lead back in the running backs room every year that he's been in the NFL. And every single year, that team went to the playoffs. So that tells you the kind of functionality that Devin Singletary is capable of bringing to the field. And then I to be honest with you, I just think that the Giants aren't going to run the ball as much this year. I think they're going to use the short passing game as a pseudo running game in a lot of ways. And they're going to try to get the ball into the hands of Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, and Malik Neighbors as quick as they possibly can to allow those guys to use their quickness and their yards after the catch ability to make big plays. And if you're able to do that, and I really believe that that's Brian Dable's total focus and concentration this year, you combine that with a defense that has the potential to be a top 10 defense in the NFL. Well, all of a sudden now, that takes pressure off of your offense. And if you're able to make some explosive plays, you're going to steal a bunch of wins.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dable has to incorporate Jalen Hyatt more in the offense this year.
Yeah.
I mean, really last year, to me, it looked like he would just run a fly route down the field. He didn't really have like a route tree that he would go off of. I didn't think he was incorporated enough, as I said. And Wan'Dale Robinson showed some promise in his rookie year. He had that one game against the Packers where He made a couple catches on that drive, the Tommy DeVito game in the fourth quarter, where they came back and won a
Big
close.
plays. Yep. Yep. And to be frank, I don't mean to slight Darius Slayton, but Slayton's not so much a yards after the catch guy as much as he is just a downfield guy. Now, in order to get the ball downfield to him for big plays, you need the protection from the offensive line that will give Jones time to throw it. You don't necessarily need a lot of time to get the ball into the hands of Neighbors or, again, Robinson or Hyatt. Those guys can take a quick toss and they can turn it into a 25-yard gain.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't necessarily know what Slayton's future with this team is after yesterday came out, that he would have welcomed the trade if he knew his role was going to be lessened this year. So that'll be an interesting storyline to watch. But another storyline to watch was the Wink Martindale situation last year. So everybody knows Wink Martindale and Brian Daboll did not part ways on the best of terms. What was the story that you got out of that situation?
Well, I think you have two very competitive, fiery personalities, and it's obvious that Wink was frustrated with some of how things went. And clearly, if we're to believe the accounts, and I was not in the room when he and Daboll had their disagreement, I think that's the best way to put it, because we can't give you another adjective since we were not there to see it. But clearly they had a disagreement over how things were going, and a couple of the assistants on the defensive side that Daboll had decided to dismiss, and Wink Martindale, by his own admission, stormed out and did not want to coach here anymore. So that's his prerogative, just like it's the prerogative of the head coach to make changes on his staff. I don't think that's nearly as important as the selection of Shane Bowen coming from the Tennessee Titans as the new coordinator. That's the more significant decision that has been made. And based on his track record in Tennessee, he's got a pretty good foundation in terms of knowing how to stop people.
Yeah, while he was in Tennessee, that their run defense was always at the top of the league. So you were just mentioning Shane Bowen. What's the biggest difference going to be between Bowen and Martindale based on schemes and game plans?
Martindale is, if not one of the most aggressive blitzing defensive coordinators you're ever going to find. Bowen is on the opposite end of the spectrum. He does not like to blitz much at all. He wants to make sure that his guys up front can do whatever they have to do to get the appropriate the pressure on the quarterback, and he's not so much concerned with having to send extra guys. Now, with Burns, Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence, I'd say he's got three guys who should be able to get the necessary pressure that he's looking for so that he won't be pushed into a spot where he's got to blitz people. And again, that makes him uncomfortable. He does not want to blitz people. And that's why the trade for Brian Burns from Carolina was so incredibly important for the Giants to make, because he adds that extra component to the pass rush. With just Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau, the Giants did not, in my opinion, have the requisite pass rush to run Shane Bowen's system. But when they added Burns, they now gave him all the tools in the toolbox that he needs.
Yeah, I think Wink always had these elaborate blitzes that he was running where he would send linebackers and just other people to kind of give Dexter and Thibodeau more room to do what they do. All right, so one last question about the coaches. If this season doesn't go the way the Giants are planning for it, the way John Mara hopes, could Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen be on the hot seat?
I don't think so. I just don't. Now, there are a lot of reasons why a team's win-loss record is what it is. And I think if you're the Giants, you're going to look more at indicators when you make that type of assessment. You're not going to look at how many games did they win or lose. You're going to look at, did the Giants improve in red zone offense, in third down efficiency? Did they improve in scoring? On defense, did they improve in stopping the run? Did they improve in red zone efficiency again? Did they improve in third down conversion rate? If you see a lot of improvement across the board in a bunch of those indicators, even if circumstances like an injury or like a crazy penalty or a couple of bad bouncing balls and a couple of last-second losses results in a, I don't know, let's just say for argument's sake, 7 or 8 wins, which would be sub 500. Well, guess what? That's not going to move the needle on the GM and the coach, because the Giants will be smart enough to understand that if all of the other indicators, or at least most of them, are showing this is a better football team, well, that's what's going to weigh heavily on the grading system as to, do those guys have a good plan in place for this franchise? Just looking at the total win-loss record at the end of the year is superficial. It's shallow and makes no sense. I know that's what a lot of fans are going to do, because all they want to know is how many games did you win and lose. That's not how you grade a football team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if they finish 6, 7, 8, like even 9 wins, it might hurt the Giants. Like if they get ahead of the rebuild again and get into the playoffs, it might hurt them like it did 2 seasons ago. Because then last year they thought they were ready. They tried to go not all in, but tried to go in on this team. And obviously we saw what happened last year. So I don't think we're ready to win yet. I think we just need to stay the course of this rebuild, and Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen should be in charge for years to come. All right, jumping to somebody that Brian Daboll liked to use a lot, Saquon Barkley. When he left the Giants and jumped ship for the Eagles, there was a very negative reaction from the media. What was the reaction like in the Giants building?
Well, he was their best offensive player, their one true superstar on the unit, and so there was disappointment. Joe Schoen himself said that they wanted to keep him. He absolutely wanted Barkley to return. We know that the owner, John Mara, was very clear in any of the Hard Knocks shows that you've seen. They wanted him back. The problem was, given salary cap constraints, the Giants are in a position where they just could not overpay for a running back who had not shown enough durability and reliability to warrant that kind of money. And the Philadelphia Eagles blew him out of the water with a ridiculous contract. But see, they're in a position that they can afford to gamble because they had a lot more salary cap room, and they have a team that, in terms of its building process, is a lot closer to a Super Bowl than the Giants are. So for them, they were more willing to take a big financial risk. And make no mistake about it, business-wise, the Barkley deal is not a smart business deal when you consider his lack of durability. It's just not. And the Giants understood that. But being that they're not one step away from a Super Bowl, it simply made no sense for them to take a risk of that nature or to roll the dice. And so I think everybody within the building understands that. And at the same time, you're disappointed to see a superstar leave.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very risky move from the Eagles, especially considering how they finished last year. But they are a Super Bowl ready roster with a pretty solid quarterback in Jalen Hurts. I don't want to call him, like, he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. But the running back's the last piece that you need. He's not the first piece, and then you're building around him. You need a quarterback and wide receivers and an offensive line before you can really go in, and a good defense and sign that running back. So while everybody was definitely disappointed, it was the right move not to bring him back with what the salary was going to be.
Ben, it's important to understand something. Saquon Barkley spoke for over a year and a half about how he wanted to stay with the Giants. He wanted to be a lifetime Giant. He wanted to help restore winning to this organization. He wanted to be in the Ring of Honor. He preached all of that loyalty. But when push came to shove and the money was overwhelming from somebody else, he took the money. And that's okay. I just wish that he had been a little more transparent about it and simply said that he left because he was overwhelmed by an incredibly rich offer. That's really what it comes down to. They say that everybody has a price, right? Well, we found out that Barkley had a price. And being loyal and showing a hometown discount, if you will, something that he professed time and time and time again, well, that turned out not to be worth very much when somebody came to him with the keys to Fort Knox.
Yeah. I mean, I can't blame him for taking the money. Like, he wasn't going to get that from the Giants. He wasn't going to get it from any other team. That offer.
No other team was going to give him that money. That's why he was so quick to take the Eagles deal, because it was overwhelmingly the most generous offer that he was going to get from anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, the Giants are going to play a softer schedule this year after not winning a ton of games last year.
A little bit softer. Not a ton. A little bit softer.
Yeah. But what's a part of the schedule that you think it's going to be a little bit softer and they can pick up some easier wins? And then what's one part where it's going to be tough and they can, and it's going to be a lot harder to win?
Well, let's put it this way. We all know that the Giants over the course of the last decade or so have had trouble out of the gate. And that's part of the confluence of events that have hurt this team time and time again. Obviously, poor play, injuries, difficult schedule, getting some bad breaks, all of these things kind of snowball. They pick up steam and momentum, and before you know it, you're getting 2 months into the season, and you're just in the middle of despair. Well, the Giants need to break that string. And how do they do it? Well, one of the ways they do it is by knocking off Minnesota and Washington in the first 2 weeks of the season and getting off to a 2-0 start. You remember what happened in 2022 when they won 9 games and made the playoffs? How good did they look the first half of the season?
It was tremendous. And it wasn't just that they were blowing teams out. They were getting a lot of close wins, performing in the clutch.
And so sometimes it's all on you, and then other times you get some breaks as well. Well, the Giants, in a way, got themselves a break because they play at home opening day, and then the following week they go to Washington, where rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels will still be trying to figure out the playbook. And the Giants have owned the Commanders for quite a long time now. The schedule is set up, in my opinion, where the Giants, if they come out of the gate and play well, they could easily be 2-0. And that's the kind of spark that they need in the ignition to get them off and running on what could be a really solid season. So that's my answer to the first part of your question. The second part of the question is a little more difficult because right after playing Washington, they've got Cleveland, Dallas, Seattle, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. I mean, talk about 6 games that are going to really challenge you. Well, if you get off to a 2-0 start, just maybe that'll give you a little impetus and a little flow going where you can make a little business during that tough 6-game stretch. And if you split and go 3-3, well, now you come out of that at 5-3. I think anybody would sign for 5-3 after 8 games, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. That was
so that to me, because remember now, after that stretch, they get a home game against Washington again, which is a team that they should have already beaten. And then they go to Germany and they play a very poor Carolina team. So if the Giants could take care of business and win their first 2 games, which are very winnable, and turn that into a 3-3 split in the next stretch, you now have the makings of a very solid, substantial season. You've set yourself up for something that could be meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't sleep on Washington, though, this season. They added Austin Eckler in the offseason. They added some other pieces that I think they're going to be better than people think. And I know the Giants own them. They beat them every year. But just overall, I would look out for them in the league.
Well, their secondary and their offensive line right now are the two really strong weak spots, besides the fact that they'll probably turn over the keys at quarterback to Daniels right out of the block. And you just don't know about a rookie quarterback who has to start right away. History tells us in the NFL that, 90% of the time, and I'm picking out a number here, I know it's an overwhelming percentage, rookie quarterbacks do not fare well coming out of the gate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But you saw Patrick Mahomes, he sat for a year. Tom Brady didn't start right away. It just works better when they don't start week one. But in Washington's situation, who else are they going to play? So it's like he's kind of got to travel. Or he's kind of got to.
Well, and a whole new coaching staff too. So Washington to me is a big unknown, but they're in flux. And if I'm the Giants, I have to look at it like those are two games you need to win.
Yeah, for sure. Quick side note here. Do you travel with the team?
Yes, I go to every game. I am on the premises for every game.
All right, so what's one city you're looking forward to going this season?
Oh, to be honest with you, I just look forward to going everywhere. I mean, as long as I'm at the game, it doesn't matter if it's on Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, the moon. It doesn't matter. As long as I'm there doing my job, I don't have a favorite place. They're all wonderful.
All right, one last question for you. So you covered a lot of the best Giants team in their history, including the entire Eli Manning era. Do you have any good stories from that era that you could share?
Well, I will give you one really, really quick one. You'll remember in the 2011 season when they beat the Patriots, for the second time in the Super Bowl, and Eli did what he did to lock things down. It's funny. I was on the sideline, and he hits Manningham on that play down the left sideline, the tiptoe play that went under review, the bomb, one of the great throws in Super Bowl history. And I was on the Giants sideline, which was opposite where Manningham caught the ball. And I, like everybody, will look it up at the replay booth to try to see if he's in or not. And he was in. All right, great. But here's the thing. As you recall, that didn't exactly get them into field goal range yet. They still had to move down the field and get some points. They were losing that game. They had to score. A field goal would have been fine, but they had to score. So as they're moving down the field, and I'm thinking to myself, as they're getting across the 50 and they're moving into Patriots territory, I'm thinking to myself, what is Eli going to do here? What does Coughlin want Eli to do? Are they going to go for the end zone? But if they do, they're going to leave too much time on the clock for Brady. I didn't want them to score. I was thinking to myself, if they're going to lock this down, they're going to have to be more methodical. So they run a few more plays, and they're inching their way down the field. And I'm looking at the clock, and I'm like, I think there's still too much time on this clock. I think they'd be better off milking more time. And I was right down there on like the 10-yard line when Ahmad Bradshaw took the handoff and then fell into the end zone with about a minute to go. And I couldn't believe it because I'm like, oh no, Brady's got a full minute? That's too much time for him. So I can tell you, I honestly thought about that scenario. Everybody talks about it now, but I was thinking about the clock management all the way back from the time Manningham caught that long pass. I was already thinking in my mind, how are they going to manage the clock here? How much time can they milk before they take the lead and give Brady the ball back? And if you remember, there was a fourth down play, and it was right in front of me. I was right on the sideline when Brady, on a 4th and long, went back to throw, scrambled around, and completed a pass that allowed the Patriots to continue their last-second drive and then to throw a Hail Mary into the end zone. And man, oh man, I know this is not necessarily an Eli Manning story, but the wave of emotions that you get when you're on the field and you're actually like part of it, because when you're down there on the sideline, it's a whole different world than when you're watching it from upstairs in the box, or if you're on TV watching it, or if you're in the stands. No, when you're down on the sideline, you truly feel the enormity and the drama of the situation far beyond the scope of anything else. And so everything about that Giants last drive and then the Patriots last drive in that Super Bowl is just, it's one of the most overwhelming things that I have felt in my career. It was really, the electricity was incredible.
All right. Really appreciate you coming on today. I know your schedule's very busy. So do you have any last words for me as I continue on my broadcasting journey?
Well, just keep doing the preparation because, you told me before we were going to do the show you needed a little time because you wanted to do some homework and prep. And I sent you back a message and said, hey, man, you got it. That's what you got to do. Prepare, prepare, prepare. It's one of the core elements that you have to have if you're going to be good in this job. And so I certainly congratulate you for taking care of your preparation.
Thank you. All right. Once again, I appreciate your time this morning. If you're a Giants fan listening to this, there isn't a better beat reporter than this. All of Mr. Dottino's socials will be linked below, and make sure you check him out on MSG. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Sports Pod. I'm your host, Ben Valley. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you in the next one.